I was the scribe of the Galactic Throne, the one whose duty was to record everything that happened in that great hall of power. And in 40 years of recording, I had written down 1,000 injustices, and never once seen one stopped. Until the day, a hidden human battleship broke its cloak in the sky above the throne, and the entire throne room fell silent. And I learned that the most powerful thing in the galaxy is not a weapon that destroys, but a witness that cannot be silenced. The silence that fell that day was not the silence of fear, though everyone tells it that way, the throne room terrified of human firepower. It was a deeper silence than fear. It was the silence of the powerful realizing, all at once, that they had been seen, that a power great enough to destroy them all had been watching them the entire time, and had chosen not to destroy them, but to witness them, and that being witnessed was the one thing their power had never prepared them to survive. Let me tell you who I am, because a scribe sees everything and is seen by no one, and that is why I am the one who can tell you what truly happened. My name is Ollic, and I am Wind, a small, quiet, clerkish people, the kind that ends up keeping the records of the powerful because we are trusted to be invisible. I was the chief scribe of the Galactic Throne, which meant that for 40 years I had stood at the edge of the great throne room and recorded every proceeding, every judgment, every decree, every act of the mightiest body in the galaxy. The Galactic Throne ruled the settled stars. It was the seat of the great powers, the place where the fate of worlds was decided, and it ruled as such places rule, through a mixture of law and force and the absolute confidence of beings who had never been answerable to anyone. I recorded it all. I wrote down the judgments and the decrees and, yes, the injustices, because there were many injustices, more than I can bear to remember, the casual cruelties of the powerful deciding the fates of the weak, and I recorded every one, and I never once saw one stopped, because there was no one in the galaxy with the power to stop the throne. Let me tell you about the throne, because the throne's impunity is the heart of this story. The great powers who ruled from that throne room ruled without fear of consequence. That was the thing that defined them. They were answerable to no one, watched by no one who mattered, free to decide the fates of worlds in the certainty that no power existed that could call them to account. They did their cruelties openly in the throne room before the assembled court, because they had no reason to hide them. Who would they hide them from? There was no greater power. There was no witness who could matter. The throne ruled in the bright confidence of the unaccountable, and its injustices were committed not in shadow but in full light, recorded by scribes like me, because the powerful do not bother to hide what they do when they are certain that no one can ever make them answer for it. Impunity, that was the throne's true foundation. Not just power, but power without witness, power that need never explain itself, power that could do as it pleased because there was no eye in the galaxy that it had to fear. The humans had come to the throne years before, a young species making its way into galactic society, and they had taken their place at the edges of the court the way young species did, minor, unimportant, tolerated. I had recorded their arrival and thought nothing of it. They were one more small people among the many small peoples who orbited the great powers, present at the throne but powerless within it, observers rather than participants. The humans attended the proceedings of the throne. They watched. They were quiet, watchful, I noticed, in the way that I was watchful, the way of those who observe and record. But I assumed their watchfulness was the powerless attention of the weak, learning the ways of the powerful in the hope of surviving among them. I did not imagine that the human watching was anything more than that. I did not imagine that, all the while they sat quiet at the edges of the court, watching the throne commit its injustices, the humans had a battleship cloaked in the sky above us, watching too. Let me tell you about the day it broke Cloak, because it began like any other day of injustice at the Galactic Throne. The throne was sitting in judgment over a small world, a weak people, the Esh, who had committed the crime that weak peoples so often committed, which was to possess something the great powers wanted. The Esh held a system rich in resources, and one of the great powers had decided to take it, and the throne was in the process of providing the legal fiction for the taking, condemning the Esh on fabricated charges, declaring their world forfeit, ratifying a conquest dressed up as a judgment. I had recorded 100 such proceedings. It was the throne's most common cruelty, the legal theft of weak worlds, and it proceeded that day exactly as it always proceeded, the Esh envoy pleading helplessly before the throne, the great powers ignoring the pleas, the judgment moving toward its foregone conclusion. I wrote it down, as I always wrote it down, the familiar shape of an injustice I had no power to stop, and had long ago stopped hoping anyone could. And then the human envoy stood. This was unusual. The humans, like the other minor peoples, did not usually speak in the proceedings of the throne, and the throne room turned to look at the human who had risen, with the mild irritation of the powerful interrupted by the insignificant. The human envoy, a woman, looked at the throne, and she said calmly that she wished to inform the throne of something before it passed its judgment. And the presiding power of the throne, amused, allowed it, the way you allow a child to speak before you do as you intended anyway. And the human envoy said, "I want the throne to know that this proceeding has been witnessed, not just by me, by my people, and by something my people brought with them, which has been here in the sky above this throne room since the day we arrived. I'm telling you this now, before you pass your judgment on the Esh, because I think you should make your decision knowing that it is being seen. So I'm going to show you what has been watching you, and then you can decide whether you still want to do what you were about to do." And she made a gesture, and above the throne room, visible through the great transparent dome that crowned the hall, a human battleship broke its cloak. I have recorded many things in 40 years, but I have never recorded a silence like the one that fell on that throne room. Because the battleship that appeared in the sky was enormous, a vessel of obvious and overwhelming power, a thing that had been hanging in the sky above the throne, cloaked and silent, for years, close enough to destroy the entire throne room and everyone in it at any moment of those years, and the great powers of the throne, who had ruled so long in the certainty that no power could touch them, looked up at it and understood all at once that they had been wrong. That a power great enough to end them had been among them the whole time. That every injustice they had committed in the bright confidence of the unaccountable had, in fact, been watched by something that could have stopped them and had not, and was watching still. The throne room fell silent, and the silence was not the silence I expected, the silence of fear. It was something stranger and deeper, and it took me the rest of that day to understand it. Let me tell you what the human battleship's appearance actually meant, and why the silence it produced was not the silence of terror, but the silence of something the powerful had never felt before, and why it was, in the end, the beginning of the end of the throne's long impunity, not because the humans destroyed anything, but because they witnessed everything. The silence held for a long time. I have tried many times since to describe what was in it, because it was not a simple thing, and the people who tell the story as a moment of terror have it wrong. There was fear in it, yes. The great powers had just discovered that a weapon capable of destroying them had been hanging over their heads for years. But the fear was the smallest part of it, and it passed quickly, because the humans were not threatening to fire. The deeper thing in the silence, the thing that held the throne room frozen, was something the great powers had no experience of and no defense against. It was the experience of being seen. The presiding power of the throne recovered first, the way the powerful do, and tried to reassert control, and demanded to know the meaning of this, whether the humans were threatening the throne, whether this was an act of war, whether the humans intended to fire upon the seat of galactic power. And the human envoy answered calmly, and her answer was the thing that turned the silence from a moment of shock into the beginning of a reckoning. She said, "No, we're not threatening you. We're not going to fire. The battleship isn't here to attack you. It's never been here to attack you. It's been here to watch. That's its entire purpose. It has been hanging over this throne room for years, fully capable of destroying it, and it has never once fired, and it never will, because we did not bring it here to destroy you. We brought it here to witness you. And I've decloaked it now at this moment because I want you to understand something before you finish stealing the Esh world, that everything you do here is being seen. That the impunity you've ruled by for so long, the certainty that no one is watching, that no one can hold you to account, that you can commit your cruelties in the open because there's no power that can answer them, that impunity is over. Not because we're going to punish you, because we're going to watch you. And it turns out that's worse. It turns out that's worse. The throne room did not understand at first, and neither did I, and the human envoy explained. And the explanation is the heart of everything I learned that day about power and its true vulnerabilities. She said, "Here's what we figured out, watching you all these years. Your power doesn't actually come from your weapons or your fleets or your law. Those matter, but they're not the foundation. The foundation is impunity, the certainty that you can do what you want and never have to answer for it, never be seen for what you are, never face anyone who can make you reckon with what you've done. That's what lets you commit your injustices in broad daylight. You're not ashamed, because shame requires a witness who matters, and you've never had one. There's never been a power great enough to make you feel seen. So you've ruled in a kind of moral darkness, doing terrible things in full light but never truly being seen doing them, because no eye that could matter was ever watching. And we realized that the thing you were most vulnerable to wasn't a bigger weapon. It was an eye you couldn't ignore, a witness you couldn't dismiss, a power great enough that you'd have to feel seen by it. So that's what we built, not a weapon to destroy you, a witness you can't look away from, the most powerful battleship in the galaxy, and its only function is to make you visible to yourselves and to everyone. I sat at my scribe's table, my hand frozen over the record, and I understood that I was witnessing something I had no precedent for in 40 years of recording the throne. The humans had not come to overthrow the throne by force. They had come to do something stranger and more devastating, to strip it of the impunity that was its true foundation, to make the unwatchable powers watchable, to turn the bright, confident darkness of unaccountable power into the unbearable light of being seen. And the genius of it, the terrible genius, was that they did it without firing a shot, without threatening anything, simply by revealing that they had been watching all along. Because the moment the great powers knew they were being watched by an eye they could not destroy and could not dismiss, the impunity that let them rule was gone, and they could feel it going. And that was the silence, that was the real silence that fell on the throne room. The silence of beings who have ruled in moral darkness for 10,000 years, suddenly finding themselves in the light. "You can still steal the Esh world," the human envoy said into that silence. "We're not going to stop you. That's important. I need you to understand that we're not going to use force to stop any of this. The battleship will never fire. We're not here to be your masters. We're not going to replace your tyranny with ours, rule you by a bigger gun the way you've ruled everyone else. That's not what witness is. Witness doesn't compel. It just sees. So you can finish stealing the Esh world right now with us watching. You have the power and we won't stop you, but you'll do it seen. You'll do it knowing that the most powerful thing in the galaxy watched you do it, recorded it, and will carry the truth of it to every world you rule. You've always been able to commit your cruelties in the comfortable certainty that the truth of them would never matter, never be seen, never be carried beyond this room by anyone who counted. That certainty is gone now. Whatever you do here, you do it in the light in front of a witness you can't silence. So go ahead, finish your judgment. We're watching. Let's all see what you decide to do now that you know you're seen." And the throne room could not do it. That is the thing that proved the humans right, the thing that I recorded with a hand that shook. The presiding power of the throne looked at the Esh envoy and looked up at the watching battleship and tried to proceed with the judgment, tried to finish the legal theft of the Esh world the way the throne had finished 100 such thefts, and could not, because the theft only worked in darkness. The whole machinery of the throne's injustice depended on the cruelty never truly being seen, on the legal fictions never being witnessed by anyone who could carry the truth, on the great powers never having to feel the shame of being watched committing their crimes. And now they were watched. And under the eye of the human battleship, the comfortable injustice that had proceeded 100 times simply would not proceed, because the great powers found that they could not bring themselves to do, in the full light of an undismissible witness, the thing they had done so easily in the dark. Witness had done what no weapon could do. It had not stopped the throne by force. It had made the throne unable to act, by the simple, unbearable fact of being seen. The Esh world was not stolen that day. The judgment was not passed. The proceeding collapsed, not because the humans prevented it, but because the great powers could not complete it under the eye of a witness they could not silence. And the Esh envoy, who had come to the throne expecting to lose everything, walked out with her world intact, saved not by a weapon but by a watching, by the simple revelation that someone was seeing, and that being seen was the one thing the throne's impunity could not survive. Let me tell you what happened to the throne after the day the human battleship broke Cloak, how an institution that had ruled the galaxy through impunity for 10,000 years was unmade not by conquest but by witness, and what I, the scribe who had recorded 1,000 unwatched injustices, came to understand about the true nature of power, and the one thing that even the mightiest unaccountable tyranny cannot survive. The eye it cannot close, the witness it cannot silence, the simple, unbearable fact of finally being seen. The great powers did not surrender that day. I want to be clear about that, because the change did not come all at once, and an institution of 10,000 years does not fall in an afternoon. What happened instead was slower and stranger and far more thorough. Because the humans had not attacked the throne's power, they had attacked its impunity. And impunity, once lost, does not come back. And an institution that has ruled by impunity discovers, when the impunity is gone, that it has been hollowed out from within without a single blow being struck. The first thing the great powers tried was to destroy the battleship. Of course they did. They were powerful, and a power confronted with a threat reaches for force, and they reasoned that if they could only eliminate the watching vessel, the impunity would return, the eye would close, and they could go back to ruling in the comfortable darkness. They moved their fleets against the human battleship. And here the humans revealed the second layer of what they had built, the thing that made the witness truly unsilenceable. Because the battleship did not fight back when the fleets came for it, it did the thing the envoy had promised. It never fired. But it could not be easily destroyed either, because the humans had built it to survive, armored and shielded and resilient beyond anything the great powers possessed. A vessel designed not to win battles but to endure them, to keep watching no matter what was thrown at it. The great powers threw their fleets against it, and the battleship simply weathered the assault, shields holding, hull enduring, never firing a shot, never stopping its watching, and the spectacle of the great powers hurling their might against a vessel that would not fight back and would not fall was itself witnessed by the whole galaxy, and it made the great powers look exactly like what they were. Bullies attacking a witness, tyrants trying to put out the eye that had seen them, and failing in full view of everyone. That was the thing the humans had understood that the great powers had not. That the attempt to silence a witness is itself the most damning testimony. When the great powers attacked the battleship, they were not restoring their impunity. They were destroying what remained of it, because the whole galaxy watched them try to destroy the thing that had seen them, and understood from the trying that they had something to hide, that they feared being seen, that the watching had touched something true. An innocent power does not fear a witness. Only the guilty try to put out the eye. And the great powers, hurling their fleets against the unfighting, unfalling battleship, confessed their guilt to the entire galaxy with every shot they fired. And the witness only grew stronger, because now it was not only watching the throne's injustices. It was watching the throne try and fail to silence the watching, which was the most revealing injustice of all. And the witnessing spread. This is the thing that truly unmade the throne, the thing that the single battleship had only begun. Because the humans had shown the galaxy something it had never seen, that the great powers could be watched, that their impunity was not absolute, that there existed the possibility of an eye they could not close. And once the galaxy had seen that possibility, the other peoples, the minor species, the weak worlds, the countless small peoples who had lived under the throne's unwatched cruelty for 10,000 years, began to watch too. Not with battleships. Most of them had no battleships. But the humans had taught them the deeper lesson, the lesson beneath the vessel. That witness itself was the weapon, that the simple act of seeing and recording and refusing to look away was the thing the throne could not survive. And so the small peoples began to witness, to document the throne's injustices, to carry the truth of them from world to world, to refuse the silence and the forgetting that the throne's impunity had always depended on. The human battleship had been the first eye the throne could not close. But it taught a galaxy to open its own eyes, and 1,000 eyes cannot be closed by any power, however great. I played my own part in it, and it is the thing I am proudest of in my long, quiet life. Because I was the scribe, I had recorded the throne's injustices for 40 years, written them all down in the official record, the record that the throne controlled, the record that never left the throne room, the record that was itself a kind of impunity, a documentation that documented nothing because no one outside the throne would ever read it. And after the day the battleship broke Cloak, I understood what my 40 years of records actually were. Not a record of the throne's power, but a testimony of its crimes, a complete and detailed witness to 10,000 injustices, written in my own careful hand. And I did the thing that the human witness had made possible, the thing I had never dared imagine in 40 years of recording in the dark. I made my records public. I carried 40 years of the throne's documented injustices out of the throne room and gave them to the watching galaxy. The legal thefts, the fabricated judgments, the casual cruelties, all of it, recorded in meticulous detail by the scribe who had been trusted to be invisible. The throne had let me see everything because it never imagined the seeing could matter. The human battleship had shown me that it could. The throne tried to stop me, of course, tried to silence the scribe the way it had tried to silence the battleship. But it was too late, because the witness had already spread too far, and a scribe's records carried out into a galaxy that had learned to watch could not be recalled. My 40 years of testimony joined the human battleship's witness and the 1,000 opening eyes of the small peoples, and together they did the thing that no weapon had ever done to the throne. They made its impunity impossible. The great powers found themselves ruling a galaxy that was watching them, truly watching, recording, remembering, refusing to forget. And a power that rules by impunity cannot rule a galaxy that will not stop seeing it. The injustices that had proceeded so smoothly in the dark could not proceed in the light. The legal thefts collapsed under witness. The fabricated judgments could not survive being seen. One by one, the mechanisms of the throne's cruelty failed, not because anyone destroyed them, but because they had only ever worked in darkness, and the darkness was gone. The throne did not fall in fire. It did not fall to conquest, or to a greater power, or to the human battleship's guns, which never fired. It fell the way unaccountable power always falls when it finally becomes accountable. It fell into the light, and could not survive there. The great powers, watched at last, found that they could no longer be what they had been, because what they had been depended entirely on not being seen. And slowly, over the years that followed, the throne changed, not destroyed, but transformed, forced by the unrelenting witness of a watching galaxy to become something it had never been, accountable. A power that had to answer for what it did. A throne that ruled in the light where every act was seen, and where the injustices that had once proceeded so easily simply could not happen anymore, because they could not survive being witnessed. Let me tell you how it ended, what the Galactic Throne became when its impunity was finally and permanently broken, and what the human envoy told me, When I asked her at last why her people had chosen witness over conquest, restraint over the overwhelming force their battleship so clearly possessed, because her answer is the deepest thing I learned, in a long life of recording the powerful, about the true nature of power, and the one kind of strength that even the mightiest tyranny in the galaxy could never stand against. The galactic throne that exists today is not the throne I served for 40 years. It rules still. The great powers are still great, still strong, still seated in the throne room where I once recorded their cruelties. But it rules now in the light, and that has changed everything, because a power that must act in the light is a different kind of power than one that acts in the dark. The injustices have not entirely ended. The powerful are still the powerful, and they still bend the law toward their own advantage, still favor the strong over the weak in 100 small ways. But the great open cruelties, the legal thefts of whole worlds, the fabricated judgments, the casual condemnation of the weak, those have ended, because those required darkness, required impunity, required the certainty of never being truly seen, and that certainty is gone forever. The throne rules watched now, and a watched power cannot do what an unwatched power does, and so the throne has become, without ever being conquered, a vastly more just thing than it was, not because anyone forced justice upon it, but because injustice cannot survive being seen, and the throne can no longer hide. The human battleship still hangs in the sky above the throne room. It has never fired. It never will. It remains there, decloaked now, visible, a permanent witness, the eye that the throne can never again close, and the great powers have stopped trying to destroy it, because they have learned that the witness cannot be silenced, and that trying only deepens their shame. They have made, in the end, an uneasy peace with being seen. They do not love it, but they have learned to live with it, and in learning to live with it, they have become better than they were. The way anyone becomes better when they can no longer act in the comfortable certainty that no one is watching. The battleship watches and the throne behaves, and the watching is the whole reason for the behaving, and that is the strange, quiet revolution that the humans worked upon the galaxy. Not a conquest, not an overthrow, but the simple permanent installation of an eye that would not look away. I retired from my post as scribe, eventually. My work transformed in its final years from the recording of unwatched cruelties to the documentation of a power learning to be accountable. And before I retired, I sought out the human envoy, the woman who had stood in the throne room and decloaked the battleship and broken 10,000 years of impunity with a single act of witness, and I asked her the question I had carried since that day. I asked her why. Why witness and not conquest? The humans had built the most powerful battleship in the galaxy. They could have used it to overthrow the throne by force, to seize power, to rule. Why had they chosen instead to merely watch, to install themselves as a witness rather than a master, to break the throne's tyranny without replacing it with their own? And the human envoy gave me the answer that is the last and deepest thing I learned, the thing I have spent my retirement turning over in my quiet mind. She said, because conquest would have made us the new throne. Think about it. If we'd used the battleship to overthrow the great powers and rule in their place, what would we have become? We'd have become exactly what they were, a power ruling by force, by the threat of the gun, by the fear of what we could do to anyone who defied us. We'd have replaced their tyranny with ours, and maybe ours would have been gentler at first, but it would have been the same kind of thing. Power without accountability, and given enough time it would have rotted exactly the way theirs rotted, because all unwatched power rots, including ours. We didn't want to be the new throne. We wanted there to be no throne, no unaccountable power at all, not theirs and not ours. And the way you get rid of unaccountable power isn't to become the new unaccountable power. It's to make all power accountable, including your own. So we didn't conquer them. We watched them. And here's the part that matters most, the part people miss. The battleship doesn't just watch the throne, it watches us too. We built an eye that the throne can't close, but we made sure it was an eye that watches everyone, including the people who built it, because a witness that only watches your enemies isn't justice, It's just a weapon pointed the other way. The whole point was to end the darkness, not to move it. So we live in the light too now. The battleship watches us as much as it watches them. That's the only way it works. That's the only way it's ever worked. The eye has to watch everyone, or it's just tyranny with better aim. The eye has to watch everyone, or it's just tyranny with better aim. I have built the rest of my life around that. Because the human envoy had named the thing that made their witness different from every power that had come before, that they had not sought to be the watchers who could not be watched, the eye that saw everyone but answered to no one, which is only impunity wearing the mask of justice. They had built an eye that watched everyone, themselves included, and submitted to its watching as fully as they imposed it on the throne, and that submission, that willingness to be seen as much as they made others seen, was the thing that made their witness justice instead of just a new tyranny. The humans had not made themselves the new masters of the galaxy. They had made themselves, and everyone else, accountable, and accountability shared by all is a different thing entirely from power held by one, and it was the only thing, the envoy had understood, that could break the cycle of unwatched power that had ruled the galaxy forever. A hidden human battleship broke Cloak, and the entire Galactic Throne room fell silent. That is how the story is told, and it is true, and everyone who tells it imagines the silence was terror, the throne room cowering before the revelation of human firepower, the great powers silenced by fear of the guns that could destroy them. They have it backwards. The silence was not terror. The battleship's guns never fired. They were never going to fire. The silence had nothing to do with fear of destruction. The silence was the silence of beings who had ruled in moral darkness for 10,000 years, suddenly finding themselves in the light. The silence of the unwatched discovering, all at once, that they were seen. And being seen, it turned out, was the one thing their impunity could not survive, more devastating than any weapon, because a weapon can only destroy your body, but a witness destroys the darkness that your cruelty depends on, and a cruelty that cannot hide is a cruelty that cannot continue. The most powerful thing in that throne room was never the battleship's guns. It was the battleship's eye, the simple, unsilenceable, undismissible fact of being watched by a power that could destroy you and chose instead only to see you. The humans did not conquer the throne. They did something the galaxy had never imagined and the throne could never withstand. They witnessed it. They turned on the light. And 10,000 years of cruelty that had only ever survived in darkness simply could not go on. Once there was an eye in the sky that would not look away, and 1,000 eyes below that learned from it to stop looking away too. I was the scribe who recorded 1,000 injustices in the dark and watched not one of them be stopped. And then the humans taught a galaxy to see, and I lived to record a different thing entirely. The slow, strange, bloodless unmaking of impunity, the installation of the light, the transformation of a tyranny into something that had to answer for itself at last. The battleship never fired a shot. It didn't have to. Because it turned out that the deadliest thing you can do to a power that rules by darkness is not to destroy it. It is simply, permanently, and without ever looking away to see it.